We need peace. We long for it. And the peace that we might have received last week or the month before or last year at Advent, it leaks. We need to be continually reminded of our need for peace and Jesus to continually fill us with his peace. So that's why we light a candle of peace, because we need peace. We need peace. When do I need food? When I'm hungry. When do I need sleep? When I'm tired. When do I need air? When I'm out of breath. When do we need peace? Perhaps you need peace today. And I trust in the scriptures that Jesus said, my peace I can give to you this morning where you're sitting. The word peace is a rich word in the Hebrew language. They use the word shalom. It's the ultimate non-anxious presence, which is a term we hear today. Somebody is a non-anxious presence. That's Jesus. He walked as a non-anxious presence. Read through the Gospels and see how he handled situations. He was a man of shalom. And the Old Testament contains many examples of people asking about a person's peace. We say today, how are you? They would say, basically, how's your shalom? How's your peace? How's your inner being? How are you doing internally? The heart, the soul, the mind. So to speak peace to a person or a group is an expression of friendship and blessing, not hatred or cursing. Jesus himself issues the friendly farewell, go in peace, many times. Jesus' original audience would have understood these phrases as the typical Jewish way to wish someone well. Peace in your inner being, in your soul, in your heart, in your mind, in your person. These were healing, soothing words from Jesus. I'd like to ask James and Sheila to come on up. This is James and Sheila Burkhardt. I've known them since their son Adam played baseball, coached him. Never forget, he might have been 10 years old, showed up at baseball practice with a white dress shirt on, sleeves, collar, buttoned at the top. Then he put over his uniform over top of that. So we had a few things to start with. But the guy is talented, man. The guy could hit and throw and pitch. So James and Sheila, tell us your childhood. They are also becoming members today. They were in the membership class, and part of being a member here, becoming a member, is you share your story. And so we're going to hear that today. So James, why don't you start off just telling us a bit about your childhood, your family life, kind of where you grew up, that kind of thing.
Hey there, my name is James. I was born in the 1960s in Yukon Territories in Whitehorse, and my parents were there doing some Christian work there. So I was born into this Christian family. I have one sister. My dad, very quickly after we left the Yukon, went into working for BC Hydro and BC Tel. We moved around a little up north. And then when I was 6, we wound up eventually in Nelson, BC, which is a beautiful small community in BC. And I had a very, very privileged upbringing. My parents were highly, highly involved in my upbringing. From the get-go, they were concerned about my beliefs, my ethics, all those things. We lived in a very, very beautiful rural neighborhood. We weren't wealthy, but we had chickens and gardens and mountains, beautiful mountains, and we lived by a lake. And it was a generally pretty peaceful existence, just the four of us. My one sister, she's 14 months younger than me, and we, at that point, there was an evangelical Lutheran church in Nelson, and that was where we ended up, and I'm not quite sure why. It was a liturgical church, so every Sunday there was a minister, and he would wear a collar and such, like we've seen Gary in once when he went to Africa. And we would repeat liturgy every Sunday, and there would be a sermon, and that was largely our upbringing. I was confirmed in that church, but I'm not Catholic. When I turned 18, I graduated from high school, went to Bible school in Saskatchewan, had a very bad injury to this leg playing soccer, and so I ended up for about a year or two just totally sidelined. Yeah, and I couldn't go to work, I couldn't go to school, and it was my first kind of episode with being depressed. Nelson was a very dark place. Physically, there were tall mountains and long, long winters. There was a lot of snow. It was physically dark a lot of the time. And so I experienced some depression there for the first time. And
Okay.
yeah.
Sheila, tell us kind of where you grew up and what the family life was.
The exact opposite of him. I was originally an Army kid. My dad was in the Air Force, and I was born in Shiloh, Manitoba, in a tent. And then we were in Petawawa, and unfortunately my dad was a hopeless alcoholic. And he was asked to leave the Army. So we ended up in Timmins, Ontario. I just remember my boots freezing literally into the snow. And my mother received an inheritance, and first thing she did was get us on a train and take us back to Victoria, where she grew up, and so we grew up there. Our childhood was chaotic, unsafe. There were 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. And my mother worked full-time nights and basically just tried to keep food on the table. We were quite poor. And in our home, I particularly, but others also suffered trauma from 6 different people in my young life, some relatives and some not. And for myself then, by 14, I was in a very dark place. Do you want me to go on? And
No,
Okay.
So move there to
Okay.
kind of what happened then, friends taking you to church,
Okay, so
and then your Christian start.
right. Okay, so like I say, I was in a really despondent, hopeless place at 14. No, there just didn't appear to be any answers at all. No adults in my life that were offering any kind of comfort or a way out of what was going to be my future. I was the one most likely not to succeed in my family, and hanging out on the street a lot, hanging out with other kids that were also troubled. And I borrowed an album called Jesus Christ Superstar, which sounds very odd, but I remember listening to it. It's not a theological record, by the way.
Some of it is.
But
It's not as heretical as some people think.
But I remember looking at the picture of this Jesus and thinking, if only I knew him, if only I could sit down and talk to him. And I started thinking on my own about whether there was a God, and if there was a God, who he was. At night, I was starting to have night terrors. I was unable to sleep. I had a lot of physical symptoms of the stress that had been accumulating over the years. And I started to feel oppressed as well by evil. I knew it was there. I knew I had seen evil, not good and bad, evil. And I was very, very heavily weighed down with this oppression. And one night, I reasoned that if there was a God, they were who they were, no matter what anybody said. And in Victoria, there was a lot of hippies, there was a lot of people in orange gowns banging drums, there were people with magazines on the street corners. I didn't know which one to go to. So I figured that if there were a God, he was who he was, no matter what people said, and that if I wanted to get the right one, I would ask my Creator to help me, because if he was real, he made me. So I just prayed, and all I said was, Creator, help me. And literally, I could feel a presence, a person, like when you close your eyes and you feel a person beside you, settling down over me, and at the same time, this evil, heavy oppression didn't just leave, fled. And it settled on me, and it was so astounding that I laughed. And I said, thank you, whoever you are. And I fell asleep, and in the morning I asked, okay, who are you? What do you want from me? I was willing to do whatever he said. Go anywhere, dress any way, do whatever. And so that was my first supernatural experience. I then started to, in the morning I said, okay, what do you want me to read? Because we had different books in the home, agnostic and atheist family. But I heard read the Bible. So I did, and I didn't understand a word. And I met a girl at school who then asked me to a morning pancake Bible study. Her family then invited me to their church, and I learned who Jesus was, and was kind of officially saved, asked him into my heart, and was baptized there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was the start of my different journey.
Yeah. James, tell us your coming to Jesus and what some of those circumstances were. You went to a summer camp, is that?
I did, and I'm a huge believer in camps. For me, it was life-changing. One of the things sometimes that happens to people raised in a Christian home is they become a little bit inoculated to it. And the church I went to had a lot of ritual that the meaning of it wasn't made very clear to me at the time. But my parents did start me at about 8 or 9 years old in Christian camps. And it was just completely life-changing. So one of the most important camps to me was I was around the 9th or 10th grade. When I graduated from kids camp to a teen camp, there was a speaker there, excuse me, a speaker there who was basically an apologist. And he went through the crucifixion. He went through it, and he gave evidence for the crucifixion, similar to what Josh McDowell was writing at the time. And I had never seen Christianity approach that way before. It was actually quite new to me. All of these things that I had memorized as bits and pieces and verses were made clear to me as historical events, and I was just already primed and ready to go. So it was more of a fulfillment to my upbringing.
So, Sheila, back to your story a bit. Then you're off to Victoria eventually for nursing school.
Yes, we lived in Ottawa for a while. My mother was remarried, and then I ended up back in Victoria for nursing school. And as a Christian, I had been in all kinds of different denominations, and now I think of them as houses with different furniture. And so I had really got good rooting from a church in Ottawa, and then in Victoria, worked my way through nursing school and was involved in a wild church.
And so-
Learned a lot of lessons.
So, James, maybe you want to add in here too. Where did you meet then?
Okay. We met at a Baptist church in Victoria.
Okay.
Okay, on a Sunday morning. And Sheila had just come out of something very similar to a cult, basically. Yeah.
So, you get married. So tell us where you went for your education. What did you study?
Okay, well, to start off with, I went to Covenant Bible College in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, a small denomination that was prominent in the Kootenays. And then I took another year at what was then North American Baptist College, which is now Taylor College in Edmonton.
And then your university.
Yeah, I did not go to any more university than that. Okay, but I did go to Northern NAIT,
Northern Alberta Institute of Technology.
Institute of Technology, and became a respiratory therapist.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I had gotten out of a cult. That's a whole other story. If you want to hear it sometime, you can ask me. So I was visiting different churches around the city. I met James, and the rest was history.
Yeah.
In Victoria, we had our first child, Adam. He was an open heart baby. So he had open heart at 3 months.
Tell us what that means more.
He had a heart defect, kind of a complex one called tetralogy of Fallot, which means 4 things wrong. And so by 3 months old, they opened him up and fixed his heart. He was a very long time he had very bad arrhythmias after, and they kept him cold, like a seal. It was like a seal. And used an experimental drug to slow him down. And so we had our first years of raising him were just wonderful, joyful. He never walked anywhere. As soon as he was standing, he ran everywhere he went. And he did that for most of his life. And then we had Leah, our second child, and then James went back to school. We went up to Edmonton, lived there for 2 years, and then Saskatoon for a year, and then we ended up here. My mother passed away, so we wanted to be back in BC, and this was as close as we could get, was Chilliwack.
And you have a third child.
We do. I forgot. Is he even here? Yeah, I forgot that one. He was a surprise. So while James was in school, we had our wonderful Sam.
Yeah, okay.
It was just
So you moved to
amazing.
Chilliwack, you're living a normal life, buy a house, you're working, you have vacations, you
Yeah.
have your sports, as we talked about, you have your pets. But James, when I was meeting with you guys earlier, I want you to share what amazes you about God and his creation having to do with the lungs.
Sure. Okay, good. So I work with lungs, basically, and I've spent 23 years at it. The most amazing thing that I know about human bodies, to me, that I'm familiar with, it happens inside the lungs. It's something called a semi-permeable membrane, and that's a membrane on the inside of your lungs that allows for it is built in such fashion that certain molecules at certain times that are oxygen, so when you pull the air into your lungs, the oxygen goes into the lung past this membrane because it has little holes in it. It's very tiny molecule-sized holes, really. And then that molecule is right beside a blood vessel. And the blood then goes into that blood vessel, and it goes to all your body parts. So the way of getting oxygen from the atmosphere, from the room air, to your cells where it's used by fuel is through this membrane, right? And it's very special. And it has several special qualities, but the other one is that once the oxygen is used, the cell lets some CO2 go. And that CO2 can't just build up in the blood. It can't just continue. So it follows the bloodstream, and then it goes back to the same semi-permeable membrane. Then that molecule is allowed under certain conditions to pass through that membrane again and just be exhaled when you blow out. And that's an outrageous piece of engineering.
Wow. Thank you. Just good to be reminded of God's unique creation. So you're living in Chilliwack.
Yep.
Adam graduates from high school.
Yeah.
And then let's hit to August 25th, 2013.
Yeah. And it was Adam was on bypass in his heart surgery we discussed earlier. We don't know for sure about that. There are lots of problems with children who went on bypass. There's a lot. And he was on it for a long time. That bypass simply means we can stop the heart and circulate the blood with a machine. So Adam never had a normal ability to assess risk. He just didn't. He was not a bad person. He was not, he was at times reckless beyond rational.
Impulsive.
He could not control impulses. Adam, a few months before he died, was at a service in Southside Church, and he also had a Christian upbringing, but at that service, he had rededicated his life, and he had started to, he was in some dark places. He drank some, he took some drugs, and he was moving away from that. And he had been anxious and a little depressed for a long time. Just before he died, some of that anxiety seemed to really lift. And then on the 25th was the bad day. I was in the hospital working on something fairly stressful, and they came to the trauma room and pulled me out of the trauma room. And that's usually almost always a bad thing that happens if you've made a mistake or for some reason they don't think you're able to do the job. It's very uncommon. So when I got pulled out of the trauma room, I knew that something was wrong. And what had happened was the hospital staff knew for a good hour before they told me what had happened. But they weren't able to find anyone to tell me. Usually they have a social worker or something. Finally, a friend of mine that was a nurse took me into a room and told me what had happened. They didn't know who had died. They didn't know if it was Adam or Sam. And so I was just completely in shock. You know, my brain has just never been the same since. Just the whole chemistry just turned on its head. Long story short was I had to call home, and Sam answered the phone, so I knew this had happened to Adam. I went home in shock. I did not cry. I did not. Someone drove me home, and I talked to the police when we got there, and then I sent the police person home, and then everything just came crashing down for us, and it took us years to recover from that.
Sheila, do you want to add to that day anything?
Yeah, it was a day off. I worked full-time shift work, and so it was that day off when everything was done. All the laundry, all the gardening, it was all done. And I tucked into bed to watch a chick movie. Great moment. And then Sam came to the door and he said, "Mom, there's an officer at the door." And I thought, oh, what has he done? Was my first thought. And so I went to the door, and you see two officers standing there, and one says, "Are you Sheila Burkhart?" "Yes, I am." "Do you have a son named Adam Burkhart?" "Yes, I do." I'm thinking, oh boy, he's really done it this time. And then he said, "Can we come in?" And I knew that it wasn't good news. We sat down, and he said, "I'm sorry, but there's been an accident." And of course, you're thinking, okay, we can deal with that. And then he said, "I'm sorry, but he didn't make it." And that moment was, absolute agony. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I don't want anybody to know what that is like. But I will tell you that at that exact moment, that personality, that presence was there
That you
again.
had-
That
that you
I'd had
experienced when you were-
when I had that supernatural. I recognized it, recognized him. And when they talk about peace that passes understanding, it does. It's a gift. It wasn't a state of shock, although I was in a state of shock. It was something that came and surrounded me and settled on me, and I, in that moment, knew in my heart that I could trust God with it. Wow. I could trust him, that he, over the years, had earned my trust. And my faith had moved from that supernatural experience to seeing him work in our lives through years, and then to understanding intellectually and knowing why Jesus is real, and that, and having full confidence in that. But in that moment, that peace that is a gift, it's outside of ourselves, was there. Yeah. And I knew that we would be okay. And then
you, in our discussion, you listed some things over these 10 years that were lost.
Yeah. You go along in life and you follow this trajectory. And, really for me, there was before Jesus and after. Before Jesus was a certain trajectory that I was supposed to follow, that was logical for me to follow. And then after Jesus, it was like somebody picked me up out of one life and put me in another, and the track changed. And so meeting James, an absolute miracle, and moving through our life together, which, wasn't easy. We had a lot of things to work out, and raising kids was difficult. It was hard. And losing a lot of family members and moving, it was all really hard. But I think we had resilience, and you go along this track of everything's okay, God is with us, we're raising our kids, we've bought a house, we've got good jobs, we're doing the gardening, we're doing the laundry, kids are in sports, we know some of our neighbors, and then all of a sudden, it ceases to exist. It's hard to explain, but I look at pictures of myself with my kids when they were little, and I can barely look at those pictures because she's gone. That person doesn't exist anymore, that mother of three. And so it's almost like you lose your history. And then all of a sudden, you're on, in the moment that you hear, it's like you're cut free from gravity. You're floating, you have no tether until God is there and grounding you. And then you have to somehow reinvent your whole life, because your identity changes, what you know is supposed to be normal changes, and then for the rest of your life, you know that all of these things that we look at in life in terms of, okay, that's a normal life, this is the way we're supposed to do things, those things are really tenuous. And that at some point, all of us are going to face losing that sense of security and being familiar in it. And so identity is lost.
Yeah. James, thank you, Sheila. James, you have talked to us. You're coming to our men's Bible study, and you shared the other night.
Yeah.
Just what you lost health-wise, energy-wise, stamina-wise, and for Sheila as well then.
Yeah. I had a career that I was just built for, just plain and simple. I'm fortunate compared to a lot of people. I didn't kind of just go to work in cold blood. It was just an aptitude that I had, and I was never able to do it again the same way. And I'm not 100% sure why. I think my brain chemistry really changed, and my logical processes and instincts just were not what they were. I had some hearing loss. I was on some antidepressants for a while, and I had to, very early in the game, I knew that the outcomes for our experience were quite poor. There's a lot of people that lose their faith. There's a large number that get divorced. And there's a lot of illness associated with that. It's not terrific outcomes. So one of the things that definitely happened was re-examining my faith. And when I did that, I kind of went back to the beginning of, why does God exist? Is he good? Why is, is he worthy of my attention? And how do we fit this event into that kind of context? And so those were kind of the really, and that was successful. God still passed the test, of those questions. But those are mostly the losses, physically and mentally. And for the first few years, I slept a lot, and slept through, sounds like a joke, but practically slept through most of the first year. I just didn't have the ability to. Fraser Health that I work for were very, very good to me about this whole issue. And so we made it through that, yeah.
Thanks. Sheila, you've done an excellent job of articulating the unfathomable and describing a peace that passes all understanding and about needing to rebuild your identity. So what are and this is their word when I talked to them, and it was like, what was gained through this? Like, who are you now? What's life like now that you've suffered through this?
It's weird, but I'm really grateful that I was able to, survive it. And grateful that I've been able to be unattached from. See, we're born here, it's all we know. We come to faith in Jesus for our different many reasons. And God is often still just this abstract theory, and, I believe, do I believe in Jesus because I want to believe my son is in heaven, But a situation like this forces you to really look at, why do I believe in Jesus? Is he really real? Is God really real? Why are we even here? God tells us we're all going to experience loss and pain and unfair things because we live in a fallen world, and we will face unexpected losses. But he tells us, and yet, it's always that, and yet. And so being able to know that life is about the and yet. It's not about our perception of being here and what we're supposed to do and what is normal life. And we go through these, I go to church on Sunday and I work Monday to Friday, and, all those things are good. But when you go through the and yet, then you really get to see how real God is and how real Jesus is, and sort of re-examine why I believe in him. And it's not that it's all been, this wonderful, faithful experience. We've had, we've gone through the whole gamut of emotions. I've been furious with God. I've had times when I've questioned everything, when I've had no faith at all. like none. And all I could say is, help me to have faith, because I don't have any. And disappointment and fear and despondency. You go through all of that because that's normal, but I'm really grateful. And so I would say that's what I've gained, is that I have seen that no matter what, there's always the and yet.
Yeah.
God will. And yet, like from my childhood, there's and yet, he's healed me. And with Adam, every day is hard. We wake up, it's the first thing we think about. And yet, he's always there.
Yeah.
And the strength is given when you need it, and the peace is a gift. We don't will ourselves to have
Thank
peace.
you for this description
Yeah.
of the kind of peace that we talk about at this Advent
Yeah.
season. Thank you. So James, maybe you want to go next here just on what's next for you guys as a couple. What is this call? What do you sense God wanted to do with you guys now?
We're struggling with that very question. Sheila's eyesight is not very good, so we're looking at surgical options and things like that. So we're looking forward to that. She can't drive right now, and struggles at work. I still work, and although I could collect a pension, I have very much elected to keep working. It's a vocation for me, and I can't spend all day just. I live in a townhouse, so it's not appropriate for me just to sit at home and not do anything. So,
Well, there's things Sheila could have you do, I'm sure.
yeah, but I have a very, very deep concern for cultural changes that are happening with people that are below 25 years old.
Yeah.
And I have been speaking at length also with my son about this subject, about Sam, about how people that age group think and why they think that. And are we able to help them in some fashion? Are there things we can do for them? What that is going to look like in the future, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Good.
I really don't. But I really, often I just pray for them. When the little kids are up here every Sunday, I think we just have to cover them in our prayers, because there's some changes that I believe to be coming, and that it's so important that we be prepared for those.
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm thinking right now for myself.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I feel.
You
sorry.
guys are going to start grief share,
yeah.
Sheila. So let's just.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I didn't know about grief, and I know Wilf knows this too, is that it's very isolating. Even though people around you, they don't really know. And there's nothing they can say or do. Wilf and Lorena helped us in so many ways. Seeing them come here, just seeing them surviving helped us so much. And so I really felt like, maybe because I'm a nurse and I fix things, I really wanted to be able to have a place where people who are experiencing loss of someone they love, to be able to come to and be with other people who you don't have to explain it to.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So they'll be leading, and we're looking for more leaders to work with. There's a great program called Grief Share. And so you'll be hearing more about it, and you're going to...
Yeah, we'll be launching it in the spring.
We want to get started up in March, April,
Yeah.
just for those who have suffered loss. And there's some things you need to know and experience, and James and Sheila will be leading us on that. So
If anyone else feels like they want to be part of that, we would really love to have a team of people. And there are training videos that we would go through together, so
yeah,
just let us know after church if you want to be part of that.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And you guys have helped us, all of you, this whole church. Just, this is a very loving place, and just seeing you.
Thank you for
year
your
after year.
courage to speak on this Advent theme, knowing that there's peace now, but And yet, I like that idea. So thank you very much. So shalom, peace, is offered by God. It's not a detached, as we've heard, it's not a detached philosophical attitude or just saying, oh, well, things happen. Make the most of it. It's a promise that they experienced. God's peace is not some divinely imposed anesthesia that numbs you to the troubles and difficulties in life. That's not what Jesus is getting at. It is not a mind illusion of peacefulness when in reality things are chaotic and they're suffering. In the midst of experiencing evil and fear and trouble, God can come in. Jesus comes in with these words of peace at this season. It's a gift from God. And so on this Advent Sunday, and ask the band to come on up. On this Advent Sunday, it is my prayer for you, for all of us, that God will give us this vision of peace. No matter what you're going through, He can come and be that non-anxious presence around you. It's a peace that is rooted in your faith in Jesus, and it's a gift graciously given as we look at the reigning Prince of Peace.